My name is Bob Papanetti. I'm the president and CEO of the Literacy Cooperative, and I want to thank all of you for attending this special session that we have this evening. Our presenter is Constance Hill-Johnson, owner and managing director of Visiting Angels Living Assistance Services in Cleveland, Ohio. Visiting Angels is an in-home service provider assisting the elderly and older adults to live as independently as possible by remaining safely in their familiar home environment. Connie has been doing this great work for over 20 years. I want to mention, as you all know, on this call, we manage the Dolly Parton Imagination Library program, and we have 39,000 children involved. And so most of the sessions that we offer have something to do with children, and working with young children and helping build their educational foundation. However, we're thinking about this situation that there may be many families in our Imagination Library network that have an aging parent, grandparent, loved one, friend that may be approaching their golden years. And certainly, as we've seen, as life expectancy rates have gone up, children are taking care of their parents more and more often. And so this transition we know can be very challenging and emotional. There are a number of things that you need to be aware of to help that person continue living independently in their home. And, it was really during one of my meetings with Connie that we were talking about this, and I was sharing some of the challenges when my mother was getting old, my siblings and I really had to deal with this whole issue of this person who had been providing for us for all these years. We had to now think about how to take care of her and how to help her continue to live in her home, which she did really until the day she passed away. But she lived in the home that I grew up in. But we had to be aware of things like grab bars and getting rid of loose carpeting that was on the floor because you didn't want her to trip over that. So we thought that we would give this session a try and see what kind of interest. So I'm really happy that we have a really nice audience. And so just before I turn it over to Connie, I want to mention a couple things. We're recording this session, and there will be some time for a Q&A after Connie's presentation. You can put that into the chat site there, or the Q&A site. And also, Grace will be announcing the winner of the raffle at the end of the session. So, Connie, thank you so much for being here, and I'll turn it over to you.
Absolutely. Well, good evening, everyone. I am extremely excited to be here with each of you. I am going to assume that the topic caught your attention, either because you are in the midst of caring for a parent or a loved one, or you're planning ahead, or you maybe have come out of it, or perhaps you just thought, this sounds like an interesting topic, and if I don't know anything else, I know we're all growing older. And so I'm happy that you're here. Just a little bit about my background. As Bob said, I have been in this business as the owner of Visiting Angels for over 20 years. And even when I hear myself say that, it makes my hair stand up, because it feels like just yesterday when I started on this journey of talking to families about caring for their loved ones. But the reason that I wanted to do this, and when Bob invited me, and when I've had the opportunity to do this before, it's because many of the calls that I get are from families who are in the middle of a crisis. And something has happened with mom or dad, and there's been no discussion, no planning, no forethought about what we as adult children should know or should do, nor have we discussed with our parents or grandparents or whomever that elder might be, how they want to aid and what their wishes are. And so I always say it's good to talk about this. I know that I always jokingly say, I think we all know there's taxes and death that are guaranteed for us, but for whatever reason, we do not want to begin to talk about getting older and ultimately the end of life. But it's a conversation that we all should have, because I have a birthday coming up, so that's one more year older to celebrate. But all of that being said, let's just go briefly through, and I think we're going to take some questions at the end, but let's just go briefly through a few steps that I think everyone should kind of put in their back pocket. And I'm going to try to share a screen here. And I'm hoping everyone can see this. So can you put in the chat room if you can see this? I am assuming you can. So I call this role reversal because having gone on this journey myself, my parents are no longer with me, but very much involved as an adult caregiver for my mom, who passed a few years ago. But between my sister and I here in the Cleveland area, I had a brother in Columbus and a sister in Cincinnati. But my mom was diagnosed with dementia and had always been a vibrant, independent woman, even after my dad passed. But once we found out about the diagnosis, we quickly moved into some action. And so I just want to share a little bit of my personal walk and journey, things I've learned from other families, and things hopefully that will be beneficial to you. We did this with my mom after my dad passed. And so the first thing I would say to you all, assuming again, you all have aging family members, whether it's a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, and you feel a sense of responsibility, or you know if things happen, it's going to fall on you. The first thing I always say to adult children is have a meeting with your parents. Sit down at the table when no one's rushed, when you're not running to the hair salon, when the kids don't need you to pick them up from soccer practice, when dad's not going out to play golf or to the barber shop, but find a time when you all can sit and have a discussion. And ask them. So many times in this role reversal process, we automatically become the parent, if you will, and they're the child, particularly if you begin to see some signs of aging. And we'll get to that. But if they're still functioning, they're well cognitively, then ask them. Just ask them, say, hey, can we have a conversation about your wishes? And how do you want to age? Do you want to stay in this home? Do you want to downsize and move to a senior living complex? Do you just want to get in an apartment? Are you going to retire to Florida or whatever it is? But have that conversation. Most likely, they have thought about it and have talked about it privately. But most of you know, and I know most of you on here have children since you're a part of the Dolly Parton Imaginarium. But they don't want, our parents don't want to worry us or burden us with any level of responsibility as they age. But I've not met too many adult children who are able to escape that reality. You know, Rosalind Carter, and I'm going to see if I can find that while I am talking. Rosalind Carter, who is our, as you all know, our former first lady from years ago. And you know, every first lady has a platform. And I should have had this out, so I'm going to see if I can find it now. And hers was caregiving and aging, and I found it. And this is what Rosalind Carter said. There are only 4 kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need a caregiver. And so as you think of those categories, you know, usually if you find yourself talking to friends, someone is somewhere on that spectrum. You know, they've been a caregiver, they're currently doing some form of caregiving, they know they will be one, or as we all get older, we may likely need one. And so have the conversation with your parents. It doesn't have to be stress-filled. You can write some questions down. We all know our moms and dads. If you're fortunate and blessed enough to have both of them, have it with them together. Listen more than talk. But you may want to have a few questions in your back pocket. You know, to even start off by saying, you know, God forbid, if something happened to you, mom, and dad was out of town, is there an emergency list that you carry around with you? Or if you're out with a girlfriend, are they going to know who to call if you get rushed to the hospital? Those are some basic things that I am amazed having been in this business for over 20 years, that many clients that I've served or just in conversation with adult children, they know nothing about that. They don't know if their parents have an emergency call list. They don't know if their parents have documents in place. They don't know what medicine their parents might be on. They don't know who their parents' primary care physician is. And there's timing in when you pursue that, because you want to respect their privacy, particularly if they're still independent and functioning and doing well for themselves. But it still should be information that as adult children you can have and then file away, because all it takes is one incident, one fall, one accident where you're spiraling, trying to figure out how to best care for them. And the journey is much easier when you have, you've spoken to them, you know their wishes, you know what paperwork you need to reach for. We'll get to what I'm going to recommend are some required documents that many of you may have already. But again, I'm going to keep saying this. Having been in this business over 20 years, I would say 60 to 70% of the clients, the adult children that I serve, do not either, their parents either don't have the appropriate documents, healthcare power of attorney, financial power of attorney, any of that in place, or they may say, you know, we did that 10 years ago, but I don't know where it is. And so once again, those are the kinds of things that you just need to revisit from time to time. So point one is have the conversation. I think the other thing I will say to you, unless you're an only child, try to do it with your siblings. I have watched parents. I'm one of four. And one of the things I can say is my dad had passed. My mom was smart enough to know I'm talking to my four children together in the same room at the same table. And she would always say, parents know their kids. Parents know their kids. And so the beautiful thing is if you and your siblings are aligned as your parents share their wishes. But I don't always see that happen where some kids want to get involved. Some say, I'll deal with it if a crisis occurs or when the time comes. But I would say socialize this with your siblings before trying to pull your parents together. A good time, I did a talk on this several years ago. A good time to do it is after Thanksgiving. Usually families are together over Thanksgiving, usually, more so I think than Christmas. And you know, you eat and you're stuffed and you might watch the football game. But before everyone goes to take a nap or leaves is a good time to sit at the table and have this conversation, because that's probably most likely when you're going to have almost all of the children in the room. And these days with Zoom, like we're on now, and FaceTime, you can still connect with siblings that may live all across the country. So that would be my first point, is have a meeting with your parents. You don't know if you don't ask. And so start off with a lot of questions, and then you listen about what they want and how they want to age. The second one is then kind of shift and be their partner, not their parent, even though we call this role reversal. You don't want to find yourself in a situation where once they tell you their thoughts and their wishes and what they either have planned or don't have planned, or what they've thought about or not thought about, you don't want now to start telling them what to do. You want to listen. You want to clarify. You know, how many times have we all been taught to, listen and then repeat back what they said, so you can be sure that you're understanding what their wishes are and what they might want to do at certain stages of their life. So if they say, well, we want to stay in this house until we're 95 and the house has 3 levels, you may want to respond and say, Mom or Dad, I'm not certain if that's going to be safe. And that would concern me if you're continuing to go in the basement because the washer dryer in the basement, or the full bath is upstairs and you're up and down the stairs all day. So that's how you might want to respond to them, but you don't want to say, well, what do you mean you want to stay here until you're 95? That's crazy. That makes no sense. You're going to fall and kill yourself and knock yourself in the head. You don't want to respond that way, but you want to kind of listen, take some notes, and then share your feedback out of love and concern. I always say, put it on you, not on them. Say, I'm the one who's worried, and I want to make sure that I honor your wishes and that I want to do the right thing because you've told me what you want done in the event that you're not able to, whether it's physically or cognitively, make decisions or do for yourself. Help me know what your wishes are so that should that occur, we pray it doesn't, but should it occur, I will feel good about knowing that we had this discussion and I'm carrying out your wishes. So again, be their partner, not their parent. I see that a lot when I'm in homes and the adult children, the seniors will say, well, no, I guess you need to talk to my daughter because she's the boss now. Now they may say that jokingly, but I know for seniors, losing their independence and their the opportunity for them to make decisions about their own well-being, and they know their adult children now have had to step in, is hard. It's hard. And I think about that for myself personally. How am I going to feel as I age and someone has to step in perhaps and do for me, whether it's physically or in other ways in terms of keeping up my home or helping me personally, that losing that independence of doing for yourself is extremely difficult for seniors. And so as much as we love our parents and our loved ones, we still want to be sensitive to the fact that they're recognizing they can't do for themselves anymore. And again, because you love them, you want to honor their wishes. But in the beginning, during the discussion phase, you don't want to parent them because you're just gathering information so that if and when you begin to see some signs, you are prepared and you know how to step in to provide the best assistance if you can. And you'll see noted here too is you're going to do your best not to give advice, but to give options. Well, have you thought about A or have you thought about B? Can I get you information on this or can I get you information on that? And I think we have a raised hand here. So I am going to ask you if we could hold the questions, if that's okay. And I'm going to leave a lot of room at the end. So now if you know you're going to have to jump off soon, then I'll be happy to see that. And I am not watching the chat while I'm moderating, so please forgive me. So I'm going to zip on to the next slide. So address their needs and expectations. So as you're talking to them, take some notes and listen. Find out if they have any current needs right now. You may be surprised and hear your mom or dad say, these bills are coming in and I'm starting to get tired of writing checks and then having to go get a stamp or go to the bank. And I see so many adult children that way before their parents might need any kind of physical assistance or in-home assistance who have told me, oh, I'm doing my mom's bill pay. I'm doing her banking online. My name's on her account, his account. They asked me to do it. We're real transparent, but it just makes it easier. And so that might be just something that you run across initially is, oh gosh, or you go to the house and you see, an overdue phone bill or light bill. And you're like, oh, why is this overdue? And they're just putting bills aside and not keeping up with when they're due. And so that might be an initial one. So find out what their needs and expectations are. Can they cook and clean for themselves? Do they just need help running errands? I know one of the concerns we had with my parents, particularly my mom, when my mom was diagnosed with dementia, but she lived independently for a long time. But there came a time when we had to nix the driving. It was not only for her safety, but it was for the safety of others. And we were concerned about her possibly having an accident or getting lost, which she did get lost one day and couldn't figure out how to get home. You can believe that we immediately removed the car at that time. She was not happy, and that's a story for another day that will bring humor to all of us. But we knew at that time that we needed to take the keys in the car. But being observant is key as you start this journey of thinking about what my parents might need. Look, every time you go to the house, look, open the refrigerator door, see if there's food that is spoiled, that's been there a long time. If your mom was a expert housekeeper like mine was, I grew up mopping the floor on my hands and knees. That was way before Swifters. So if your mom was an expert housekeeper and now all of a sudden you're noticing that the tables are dusty and your mom hasn't mopped and the trash cans, running over and she hasn't done laundry, that's a signal that something may be going on. If she's not cooking as much, and I'm not saying as seniors get older, they're cooking big meals. They cooked big meals for those of us who were from big families and they fed their kids and their spouses. But if you notice changes in patterns like that, and they're going to the deli more, or they're asking, could they get Meals on Wheels? And you know they loved home cooked meals. So assess what's going on. And then ask them. Some parents really, and I've heard this, don't want to burden their children. They say that. They say, I don't want to burden them. I don't want them worrying about me. They have their own families. They have their own careers. They don't live here in Cleveland anymore. And so they're not going to tell you. So back to point one, have the conversation and ask open-ended questions and then listen. And there's a guy that used to be on the radio all the time, and I would hear him say, listen with a third ear. And I thought, what does that mean? But I kind of get it. There's usually the meaning behind the meaning. So as your parents are sharing with you their thoughts or what might be going on in their lives, take some mental notes, take some written notes as you begin to give thought to what a plan or what their needs might be, and then what they're expecting from you. I have seen the gamut. I have seen parents who really do not want any kind of outside help, and they have said to me, I have 5 children. They need to figure this out and figure out how to take care of me. I've heard parents say that. Then I've heard parents say, no, I've saved my money. They need to live their lives, barring a real emergency, and I'm in the hospital. I don't expect them to provide me with any kind of assistance. I'll figure out some other way. So I've seen the opposite ends, but somewhere in the middle, there's a balance, because most of us love our parents. And we do reflect back on the fact that they raised us. And so as they continue to age, again, thus the title role reversal, it does get flipped, particularly if there's some kind of chronic disease or ailment. And you are the person who can make the best decisions for their well-being and their care. So again, when we're running around and we're in our careers and we're raising our children and we're busy in the community, many times, and I was like that with my mom years ago, you kind of zip in and you zip out. How you doing, Mom? What's up? You grab something out the refrigerator, you talk to her or him for a few minutes and you run out. And you're really not paying attention to signs or even listening to them. They may be telling you about some needs and expectations. Like, wow, I really wish you'd, come by and stop at the grocery store for me every Saturday. And you're hearing it, but you're not hearing it. She's telling you, I don't want to do that anymore. It's difficult for me to go to the grocery store now. So again, listen with that third ear so that you can best determine what their needs and expectations are of you. Moving along, weigh the options, weigh some options. You could do some homework prior to even having a conversation with your mom or your dad. Things are totally different now in the senior care arena than they were when I started this business over 20 years ago. Assisted livings weren't as popular, if you will. Continuum of care campuses were not as popular. Independent living was not as popular. And so options were limited, specifically when you were thinking of different living arrangements. I think the other thing that I have seen is there are more services now that come into the home than ever before. I think I have seen every kind of service brought into a home, short of a respirator, perhaps. I've seen all kind of medical equipment. I've seen custodial care services. We all know about housekeeping services. We know about the emergency response buttons that seniors can wear if they fall. There are meal services that are now delivered, and we're not talking about the traditional Meals on Wheels. There are companies that will do very, very nice meals, nutritiously prepared meals, and deliver them now to seniors. So look at all of that. This is not just about mom or dad. It's time for them to move for their home. I always say to families, what services can be brought in? If your goal, and I've yet in 20 plus years met a senior who has said, I want to leave my home. I've not met one who said, I want to leave my home. They don't. I'd say 98% have said that. I've run into a few couples who are aging together who said, we're going to downsize and we're going to move to an independent living. We don't need this big house. The kids are gone. We're going to just downsize. We don't need 5 bedrooms anymore. But they're moving for that reason. But that aside, most folks want to stay in their home as they age. And so our job as adult children is to begin to identify what services can be brought in, or equipment or whatever, to help them age in place safely and securely as they get older. And so let them look at all of these options going forward so that you all as a family can make the best decision. I think the other thing that I'll share too is the folks who are long distance don't get off easy. I say to families all the time, everybody has a role. Everybody has a role. And so people who are long distance caregivers, and if your parents don't live here in Cleveland with you, or if you've logged into this and you live somewhere else and your parents are here, and you find yourself a bit more concerned or answering questions or seeing things when you visit, you're still a long distance caregiver. And there are a lot of things that you can do long distance for your parents or your grandparents or aunts and uncles, if you're in that role, than you could ever imagine. I know adult children who live in New York or California, and they've taken over all the groceries. They go online, they do all the grocery shopping, it's shipped right to mom or dad's house. That's their role. They're like, I can't be there in Cleveland, but this is what I can do to help make life easier. So again, whether you're in person or long distance, definitely a role that you can have as you look at, what's best for them, and as you look at weighing options. So we're going to look next at be aware. Be aware. Again, when I said before, listen with a third ear, look, slow down when you're at the home and look around. Watch your mom or dad walk around. Are they still walking steady? Are they having difficulty getting up out of the chair? As they're taking the stairs, do you feel like, I think we better put banisters on both sides? Because they seem to be moving a bit slower and holding the wall as they go up and down the stairs? Are they becoming more forgetful? Now, physicians will tell us all, there is the normal forgetfulness that we all will encounter as we age. There is that. And so we all don't need to freak out if we find ourselves forgetting things. And I'm older than I look. But if we find ourselves forgetting things, and then we immediately say, oh my gosh, I have memory loss, something's wrong. That may not be the case. But again, be observant, because at the appropriate time, you may make the decision and you want to suggest to your loved one that we go to a doctor, I will share a real quick personal story. My mom had dementia, and I shared that with you. And we were beginning to notice some things. But of course, she was saying, I'm fine. I'm in this field. My sister's a social worker. And I knew my mom had an upcoming doctor's appointment. But I'm also very cognizant of HIPAA and privacy. But I called her doctor's office and I spoke to the nurse. And I identified myself. And I said, my mom has an appointment tomorrow, and her children are concerned about her memory. And we've just noticed some things lately in terms of forgetfulness. Can you pass that note to the physician and make sure she's aware of it? And I remember my mom coming home the next day from the doctor, and she said something to the effect of, well, you kids finally get your way. She gave me a referral to go see a geriatric doctor. And I was in the other room saying, yes, because I wanted her to have a full assessment, a full geriatric assessment, which we did go, and she did have that, and she had the early stages of dementia. I am so grateful because we caught it early. Most of you know you cannot cure dementia or Alzheimer's, or whatever form of dementia it is, but the progression can be slowed down with the appropriate medication. And so in my mom's instance, she lived independently I believe, a few years longer before we had to move in the direction of making some decisions. But it was because of that awareness when we were at the house and visiting her and talking to her that we knew something was going on and it was time to go see a doctor. I'll throw a suggestion in here too, is what I share with clients all the time and other colleagues and friends and family members. It's amazing that we know for children, they need to see pediatricians. We know that. We just know if you're a kid and you're a baby, and even I think I saw my pediatrician probably until I was 16 or 17. But for whatever reason, this transition to a geriatrician or a geriatric doctor doesn't occur as readily for seniors. And I am always encouraging people that as their parents age, particularly again, if you see a chronic disease or memory loss or anything in that aging arena, that you may want to talk to your parents about shifting. Now, I know parents who have been with their same internal medicine doctor for 50 years, and they are not going to want to leave Dr. Jones. So you have to kind of navigate that. But I know in my personal instance, and then working with other families, working with a geriatric doctor is as beneficial to a senior as having a pediatrician, a pediatric doctor, work with our children. So keep that in mind as you take notes and pursue these discussions with your loved ones. So after being aware, be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself. Caregiving looks different in every single family. It looks different in every single family. Some people are really hands-on and involved. Some people are just orchestrating kind of up here and putting services in place. Some adult children are carrying some of the burden, and I don't even know if I should call it a burden, are carrying some of the responsibilities of increased financial obligations, should those occur. And the parents or the grandparents or the aunt, uncle, or whomever, maybe does not have the financial resources to pay for certain things that are needed as they get older. And so you're going to have to be honest with yourself, and every adult child is going to have to be honest with themselves about what in my budget can I contribute to on a monthly basis to help my parents as they age. And of course, if you're married, you got to talk to your spouse about that and all of that. But many times what I've seen, that's the reality. The generation of seniors that I'm caring for now, or even my mom would have been 96 now, I think. And she died in her late 80s. She and my dad had saved, but they weren't wealthy. And she had enough to cover some things, but we didn't want to exhaust every dime out of her accounts. And so when needed, her 4 children picked up the slack and did some things that we knew she needed, that we knew would be beneficial, and to a degree that we knew would help us with all of our caregiving responsibilities. So be honest with yourself. What can you contribute financially, if you can at all? Think about the proximity to your parents. Again, everybody doesn't live in the same city. I had a client once who lived in Oberlin, and her mom lived in Willoughby, and she was going back and forth almost every day and just was about to break. And she said, I cannot keep doing this. She said, I'd love to come twice a week, maybe. So she had to identify what was needed to best care for her mom when she couldn't be there every day. And so proximity is huge. One of the things I've noticed is gone are the days when adult children grow up and go to school and come back home. So many of the families that I serve now, the adult children do not live here in Cleveland. They do not. They are spread out all over the country. Mom and dad, though, are still here in Cleveland or Cleveland Heights or South Euclid or Shaker or Bedford or Maple or Willoughby, and they're not leaving. Cleveland is their home. And the adult children are saying, and I'm not moving back. And so navigating all of that, and what does that look like? And how often do you all have to come home? I've seen families where there maybe 4 or 5 kids, and once every 2 months, one of them comes home to check in, or once a quarter, somebody comes home. And so the best situations are when the adult children are aligned. That's not always the case. There's sometimes a couple of outliers who just don't want to deal with the aging process. And many times you do see 1 or 2 take up the slack. That's just called life and family dynamics. But if you and your siblings can have those conversations and be honest with each of you all, and everyone's role is not going to be equal. And I think and I'm going to say we as adult siblings shouldn't look at it that way. There's always going to be one person who might carry a little bit more because they live in that town, or they're not working, or it just happens that way. But being open and honest with your siblings and other family members who might be part of the caregiving spectrum is critical, because again, I have seen families break in the caregiving process and not speak to each other. And one person is bitter because they think the others aren't doing anything to contribute to the care. I heard a gentleman on the radio one day said, it's amazing that 2 parents can take care of 6 kids, but 6 kids can't take care of 2 parents. And I thought, it was awfully powerful when I heard him say that, because I thought, oh gosh, I've seen that more than once or twice. So again, your parents may have you may have an aunt and uncle who's still very vibrant and very active, and can they be involved? I remember when my mom, we were identifying services for my mom, and we were identifying who was coming in on what day. And her sister, my mom raised her younger sister. She grew up in the house with us. So she was more like our older sister than our aunt. And she was literally offended that we had the days covered. She was retired. And she called us and said, excuse me, where's my day with my sister? So she wanted a day to be with my mom and help care for her. And I believe that's not only because she loved her, but she literally came to live with us when she was 11. So my mom raised her. And so don't make assumptions that other family members may not want to be involved in some level of caregiving, but don't be upset if they don't want to be involved. All you can do is ask. So being honest with yourself so that on the journey, if you start that journey, you don't find yourself angry at yourself, angry at your parents because they're calling, or because that's your day, or because you said you'd be the one that handles all the doctor's appointments, or whatever it is, or they know on Fridays is grocery day and you can't make it to the grocery store. And so they call and ask you where you are and you're snapping at them because you had to work late. So be honest with yourself about what you can take on, and then be willing to adjust if you find that there's certain things that you're not able to do, but be prepared to present what that, because that need will still be there, what that alternative might be. So I am going to pause here and take some questions. I'm looking at the clock, and I know I want to be mindful of that, but there were some hands up and questions. So Bob or Beth, I'm not certain if I'm going to look for these questions in the chat room or if you
Yes.
all are going to.
If anybody has any questions, please feel free to either add them in the chat or in the Q&A section, and we'll be able to read them off to Constance. Thank you.
And I'm going to stop sharing here. Then I'll share one other document later.
Connie, I'd like to ask a question while some people are formulating theirs, perhaps, and writing them in. You talked about taking the keys away, and I know that's a big deal. And I know a lot of families that have had to do that, and it really creates lots of resentment in many cases. And of course, then when that happened, my children always were teasing me about taking the keys away. Are there things like senior driving assessment classes where for both parties, either the senior can get to the point, say, you know what, maybe I can't do this, or they really can better than the child thinks, and then maybe the children could be more comfortable.
Yeah. I know Euclid Hospital has a senior driving program simulation. They go out with them. And I know several people who have gone there. I can't speak for any other hospitals, but Euclid Hospital does have that. And they will give feedback. Now, theirs is going to be a recommendation. I really don't think you should be driving. Or, no, you're okay. And a lot of families will do that at the time of driver's license renewal. And they're really hoping that Euclid Hospital or the folks are going to say, no. But I know they have that program. And there are probably others, but that's the one that I'm aware of, that some of the families I've served go there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, looks like we have a question here. Where is the best place to find resources for in-home care?
Wow. There are a couple of organizations. I always ask people when they call me, how'd you hear about me? And it is a myriad of, and if you're specifically talking in-home care, it depends on what you're talking about. So if you're talking about services, you need a home health aide to come in and do some things for your mom or your dad. Some people Google. There is the Home Care Association of America that you can go to their website, and then they have broken down by states. You can always ask your physician. Always, a lot of families ask their physician. You can call the Western Reserve Area Agency on Aging. They're downtown. They will have a list of home care providers. I'll pause here just really quickly to give a quick definition. People don't always recognize the difference between home health and home care. So home health is you go in the hospital, your mom goes in the hospital, she breaks her hip, she comes home, and she needs some kind of skilled care that Medicare is going to pay for. So whether that's a nurse visit, whether that's physical therapy, occupational therapy, an aide who's only going to come do her bath or her hygiene visit, that's skilled care. Medicare pays for it. It's going to last X amount of days, and then it's over. Home care, or what some might call non-medical or custodial care, is what most seniors need. The clients that we serve do not need an RN. They need a good STNA, state-tested nursing assistant, or a home health aide to come cook a meal, help dad out of bed with ambulating. Maybe he had a stroke. Dad's a fall risk. He's on a walker, so they definitely don't want him getting in the shower by himself. They don't want them going in the basement because that's where the washer and dryer. They're not driving anymore. They want somebody to go to the store. So those are what we call the custodial care, the activities of daily living that keep each of us independent and taking care of ourselves at home. That's what most seniors need. So even when I get the call and they say, I think my mom needs a nurse, and I'll say, well, tell me what's going on, because I don't think she's going to need a nurse. But so that's the difference if you hear someone say home health or home care, because we'll get calls where people say, well, you know, I know you're a home health agency, and I'm like, nope, we're not a home health agency. So I always step back to make sure there's clarity around what they're looking for.
Great. It looks like we have another question here. Somebody saying that, are there any senior driving services that you're aware of? We just took away my dad's keys, and he's a social butterfly, and he's feeling very discouraged.
Oh my gosh. If you and I, sir or ma'am, whoever asked that question, could figure that one out, we will be as wealthy as the day is long. Across the country, the number one issue for seniors is driving and transportation. We all know about Provide a Ride, the various transportation services that will pick up a senior, take them to the doctor, bring them back, maybe take them to the grocery store. But those are services that they're picking up several people. You know, so they pick you up and get you to UH hospital, and your appointment is 40 minutes. Well, when that senior comes out, they're ready to go. And those drivers aren't waiting. And so they may end up finding out that, oh, by the time they circle back around here, it's going to be an hour and a half. And that's the big dilemma with transporting seniors across the country. I don't know of a community that has figured that out. Now, our aides will drive, but we're not a transportation service. So if we get a call saying, and we've gotten a couple of these, dad's going to dialysis, and can somebody pick him up 3 days a week? And so they want us to come, pick him up, drop him at dialysis, then come back and pick him up and take him home. And that's just not cost efficient for that family or for the aide. And I'll say, we're not a transportation service. We do the incidental transportation. So if we're there at your dad's house already, and you said, wow, while she's here, could she strip the linen and run a vacuum and cook a meal and put it in the freezer, and then take dad to Beechwood Mall because he wants to shop, or take him out to the movies or the Cleveland Orchestra, then that's a part of a package. But to just do individualized driving, we don't do that. And that's what seniors want. They almost kind of want somebody that they can call and say, hey, I want to go downtown to the casino. Can you come get me and take me? And I'm just not aware of a service that does that. I know that's a long answer, but we get that question a lot. They just want to pick up a phone and call, and somebody will come get them. and wait on them and then bring them back.
It looks like we have another question here. How can I convince my aged parents that they need our help?
Well, it's all in the approach. So I'm assuming with that question, you have concluded that they need help. They obviously don't think they do. And so, you know, it kind of goes back to that very first point I said is first get aligned with your siblings. That I cannot tell you how important that is, because it's hard for parents to go up against 2 or 3 kids or 4 or 5 kids. And parents are good. I don't care how old we get, they know how to pit one against another. So, and if the in-laws, if their spouse is involved and you know they love your parents, then get them involved too. But it's got to start there. And it can't start with, you're not doing good, you need help. It needs to start with, we love you and we are concerned. And this is what we're seeing. And we want to figure out how to best serve you, because if things get worse or something happens, you may not be able to make the decision. We may have to make the decision. So while you can engage and tell us what we can do to keep you safe and secure and hopefully living a long life, let's have that conversation now, because our concern is something could happen and we're going to be forced to make a decision, and it may not be the decision that you would have wanted us to make. So that's always the approach. That, you know, I always say to families that you say, please let us bring services in or let us help you, so we don't ever have to have that conversation about you having to come out. Now, you may not want to say that the first time, you know, but you might find at some point we said to my mom, services have to come in because we don't want to make the decision that you're going to have to come out. So that's the best counsel.
We have another question here. How can caregivers maintain their own physical and mental health while caring for a loved one?
Oh gosh, what a question! What a question! What a question! You know, caregivers burn out before the senior does. I know more caregivers who have just had an emotional period of exhaustion, and the senior is still going like the ever ready bunny. You know what? Find a support group. And people don't want to do that. Believe me, if you, over the next 48 hours, again, listen with that third ear, you're gonna hear someone in the workplace, in your neighborhood, at church, in the grocery store, talking about an aging matter. That's where we are as a society. So we all think we're alone. You're not. You're not. And so if you have a friend or two, and this is for men or women, take that respite. Take that respite. Depending on what your routine is, you have to step back. I know in our instance, it was my sister and I here in Cleveland. I had a sister in Cincinnati and a brother in Columbus. You don't know what it meant to us here when they came into town. They never overstepped in terms of trying to tell us what to do when they weren't here. But when they came into town, even my brother, he said, I know how to take care of my mother. He said, goodbye. I didn't come to visit you. And so he might be in town for 3 or 4 days, and my sister and I could disappear. The only time he would call me is if there was a hygiene matter. And he'd say, Connie, can you run over here? And I didn't live far from my mom. But I so appreciated that. So you're going to have to figure out how to carve out that time for you, whether it's once a week or a couple days or an evening off. I don't know what your routine is. And then find some other people who are on this journey. It's hard for people who are not on the journey to relate to someone who is on the journey. When people might say to me, oh, I know what you're going through, when I was caring for my mom. And I'd want to say, no, you don't. No, you don't. And so it was good for me to converse with other folks who either had been on that caregiving journey, or were in the midst of it. So care for yourself, You have to, or you won't be able to go the long haul.
Okay, looks like we have two last questions here. The first one is, how do I know when it's time for my parents to move to an assisted living facility?
That could be a delicate one because it may not be time. But number one, the assisted living facility is going to evaluate them first. That's the first thing. It's not like people can just say, I'm here. And remember, assisted living facilities are private pay, most of them, unless your loved one qualifies for Medicaid, and it's a Medicaid assisted living facility. Those are still private pay also. And keep in mind, even in assisted living facilities, they should still be fairly independent. Assisted living facilities generally has someone pass meds. So if they're taking medication, you don't have to worry about that. They have a nurse on staff in case there's anything clinical going on. But let's say your loved one has diabetes. I'm not certain if they all are equipped to come twice a day to give them their insulin injection. Those would be things that you have to ask. They usually need to be able to get to the dining room on their own. And it's okay if they're on a walker or in a wheelchair. Because again, assisted living facilities aren't necessarily staffed to come into every room every morning, get mom, dad up, get them dressed, get them showered, get them to breakfast. They don't have the staff to give that one-on-one. So there still needs to be a certain level of independence. So those would be the real questions. Even if you're going to do some homework before you talk to your parents and visit a few assisted living facilities, ask those questions. What do you do? What don't you do? Because they're each a little different, and ask about their staffing ratios, because what I have seen is families have been disturbed, and they call it the bait and switch, that they get their loved ones in an assisted living facility, and then they find out the services aren't as they thought, and the assisted living facility still tells them they have to hire an outside agency because their parents need more one-on-one care, and that's not what they're there for. And so that family is a little bit ticked because they're saying, I'm paying for the assisted living and I'm paying for an agency. What the heck? So ask yourself, are there things that are better for them at home? Or is that really the appropriate place? And I clearly understand what they provide, and that as they age, I will most likely be making another move to a skilled facility, or what we call a nursing home, as they age. So I hope that's helpful.
All right, well, we have another question here in chat. How do I discuss financial and legal planning with my parents without causing discomfort?
So is it uncomfortable for you, or is it uncomfortable for them? Oh, that is the question. And again, it's one of those topics that, and I don't know if it's how we were all raised, because again, I'm assuming you got a bunch of adult children on here who've got aging parents. But it's one of those topics that we feel all icky about bringing it up. And again, the question and the concern should be, should we come to the place where we have to pay your bills and manage your finances because you're not able to? Can we have a discussion on what that might look like, and where those funds are, and does someone's name need to be on the account, and do we need to put in place a financial power of attorney? You know, there's certain documents that every one of us as adult children should have. A medical power of attorney, your parents should have in place. A financial power of attorney should be in place. A living will should be in place. The basic will should be in place. A revocable trust should be in place. So there's certain things that need to be in place, because again, if the crisis hits, what are you going to do? I had a family in Little Italy, and the daughter her father died. She started caring for mother. She knew nothing. She didn't even know where her parents banked. She knew absolutely nothing. And so it was miserable for her to begin that process of trying to just find things. And so again, turn it and say, I want to take care of you. I want to do what's necessary. I know my sister got her name on my mom's account way before her dementia was diagnosed. My dad had passed, and we just said, Ma, somebody's name needs to be on your account. Somebody's does, in case something happens. And so some of it is just plain old. We said that to my sister. My sister is single in Cincinnati, got really sick 2 years ago. We marched down there, the 3 siblings, and said, enough is enough. We don't know anything about what you're doing here. And if something happens to you, it's the 3 siblings who are gonna have to try to figure it out. And so she has all of her stuff in place. But the finances are hard, but it's about what's going to be best for them. And it's what's going to keep you sane when, and if there's a trusted advisor, their banker, or if they have an attorney, invite them into the conversation. A lot of parents might say, oh, my banker or my investment manager or my attorney, the family attorney, invite them into the conversation.
All right, wonderful. We just have one last quick question here, and we did get a great presentation in chat and a lot of appreciation for tonight's presentation and the information that was shared. But our last question for the night is, what are some ways to provide daily support for my aging parents without overwhelming myself?
Wow. Start small. And then, so I heard you say daily, and you don't want to get overwhelmed. So first determine, how much time you can spend there, how much time you can and you want to spend there. Some people might say, I go right by my parents on the way home from work. So I drop by for about 30 minutes. I lay my eyes on them. I ask them, do they need anything? I grab the mail when I'm coming in. I pull the trash cans in that are on the curb. But if you're going a distance, ask the questions. And again, observe. You might find that Friday is trash day. So when I run by on Saturday, that's going to be helpful. I'm going to go by on Friday. I'm going to put the Thursday evening, I'm going to put the trash out. Then when I come back on Friday, I'm going to pull it back in. So there may just be small things that you can do for them if they will allow you. I loved the family that was doing the grocery shopping long distance and doing Instacart. That was a huge relief to those seniors that they didn't have to worry about groceries. And she'd go over the list with them on the phone. Then she'd get online, order, Instacart would deliver them. But ask them. And it doesn't have to be big to be supportive of your family. It really, really doesn't. You could strip the linen for them. As an older woman or man, it's kind of hard to get that fitted sheet onto that mattress. You can come over there and say, I'm going to strip the sheets and put them in the washer and dryer for you and put them on, and then I'm out. And you don't burn yourself out, but you're having an opportunity to go see them and interact. And it doesn't have to be every day. Don't be hard on yourself if it's not needed. Pick every other day. So I hope that was helpful.
All right, wonderful. It looks like Bob just dropped a question in the chat. I wasn't sure if you wanted to pick up the conversation from there, Bob.
Sure, I could just, I know we've run over time, but this was a great presentation, Connie. I mean, thank you. I mean, as evidenced by, the number of people that stayed on the whole time and lots of questions. And, I know people might have more questions, and if we get more, we'd love to be able to forward them to you so we can get more answers.
Absolutely. And if anyone just wants to have a conversation, I am happy to do that. This is not about visiting angels, but please feel free to give me a call. Bob has my contact information, or I'll give it to you. My office number is 216-231-6400, 216-231-6400. And you could go, well, I don't want to give you my long email address. I'm not going to do that. So just give a call. I'm on LinkedIn under Constance Hill-Johnson. And again, if you want a more personal conversation, give me a call, and then we can exchange emails at that time if you want to do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. So my question was, many aging adults are dealing with some kind of loss, right? Loss of a loved one, loss of independence, loss of just their former self. What is a gentle way to talk about counseling services? As many people in previous generations they didn't look at counseling sessions or going to a psychiatrist very positively. Is there any tricks you got on maybe how to deal with that topic gently?
Yeah, it's I think I don't know about the really older population. I think mental health and counseling is so common now. And I'm not going to say I know that with the older generation, but I tell you, this younger generation, I think everybody under 40 is seeing a therapist. I just do. I think everybody is talking to somebody, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's not a thing wrong with that. So it was kind of taboo then. But again, start with that geriatric doctor or that internist. Some would rather start with their pastor or their priest. That's taken a baby step. So you got to do the baby steps. You can't. My mother used to say, "Don't carry me too fast. Don't, you're moving too fast. I'm getting older." So start with those baby steps, and make sure they don't think that you think they're crazy. And I hope you don't mind me saying it that way. That if you feel that they need to talk to someone, and particularly if one of the parents has lost the other one and they're going through grief and the stages of grief, and you're thinking, well, she should have bounced back by now. No, everyone grieves differently. And so that's when you look up grief support groups, or, if someone has gone through hospice has a wonderful bereavement team and a grief support group. So a few avenues there.